Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rena. If you're new here, thank you for tuning in. Today is a really exciting day because I'm doing a collaboration with a friend of mine here from YouTube, Mariam. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I have a really hard time pronouncing certain names and my accent doesn't help. So I hope I'm saying that right. Her channel name is Mariam A. I'll have it linked down below and in the cards up here. We are doing a collaboration video sharing our top 10 favorite indie singles. So both of us are really into indie brands, which makes this collaboration really, really special. I have been wanting to collaborate with her, and she actually reached out to me first. I was going to reach out to her the day before, but I didn't have a concrete idea. So I was very excited to get her Instagram message, and I was so excited to get started working on this. So we decided to come up with 10 indie singles that we both really love. We both use indie brands quite a bit. It's something that I think defines both of our channels, and so I think it was a really great idea on her part to do this because it is something that we have in common, and I just really love her and her channel. She has some of the most creative, beautiful eye looks. Her eye looks on Instagram are also incredible. I'll link her Instagram down below. I am constantly inspired by the color combinations that she comes up with. So I'll be sure to include her Instagram down below. Please check out her channel and her video. I can't wait to see the shadows that she comes up with. She also had another really great idea, and we're both in research fields, though very, very different fields. I guess that was a really repetitive way of putting it. She is in science and STEM, and I am a historian. So we have very different backgrounds, but we wanted to both contribute 5 random facts about being a researcher, which I think is super fun. So every 2 shadows, I'm going to sprinkle in a random fact about myself because I think it'll be kind of a fun little added thing. I really liked that idea that she had because she said that she had some people on her channel who were really interested in kind of finding out the life of a researcher. And so I thought it'd be really cool to do it too. Like when she said that she wanted to do this idea, I was like, yes, that's really cool. I don't know if anyone on my channel is interested in it, but I would like to talk about it because it is such a big part of my life. And I know being a researcher and working in a lab type of environment is a big part of her life as well. So here we go. All of our shadows, we decided not to include any that are discontinued. We will probably have, I know I have a couple in this little cup here that have been discontinued but are still favorites of mine. I still wanted to include them, but you can't get them anymore. So I did want to include them anyway. So I'm going to start off, I kind of think I'm going to go brand by brand because I have a couple where I have a couple from the same brand. So the first 2 that I'm going to mention are Candied oh, I didn't take off my swatches from earlier. It'll be okay. We will work with it. It has been a day and a half, so I'm not surprised that I forgot to do something. Okay, and these are of course very pigmented, so it's taking a while. That's okay. So the first brand I'm going to talk about is Femme Fatale. They are an Australian brand, if I'm remembering correctly. You can get their shadows full size from Shiro Cosmetics, I believe. And probably a couple other retailers, but I sometimes do order just straight from them because the conversion rate is in the US dollar favor, so it's usually not too bad. Shipping isn't that expensive considering it's coming international. But yeah, these 2 are my favorite from Femme Fatale. This one is called Alpine Skies. I hope you guys can kind of see that it's this glowy duochrome color. Let's see. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's kind of got a taupey gray brown base. You can kind of see it when I shift my hand with this beautiful greeny blue overlay. I love this color. It's great as a wash of color all over the lid. I wore it the other day on top of a taupey gray brown eyeshadow and just kind of used it to give it a little bit of an interesting look, but not kind of overdo it. As you can see, I'm wearing pretty neutral makeup for me because I was teaching today and I had office hours. So I wanted to be a little more toned down, but still kind of fun. So I did like a really smoky look. But this is a color that I really like to kind of put on top of neutrals. It does work well on its own as well, but it is one of those nice kind of transformative shades. The next one I have from Femme Fatale, which is one of my other top 10 favorites, is Candied Apple. This is one of those shades where if you're getting into indie eyeshadows, this is one that you're probably going to get recommended to you, at least on like indie forums. This one swatch is kind of difficult because you can see it looks almost patchy. It doesn't go on this way on the eye, so this is kind of tricky one to swatch. Yeah, it's just gonna look super terrible in these swatches. Maybe I can show you on my finger. It's like a reddish color with a beautiful green duochrome. Maybe on my arm. It's really hard to show this one because the shift is kind of subtle, but it's a really beautiful red berry shade with a bit of a green. It's different than shades like MAC, what is it called, Club and Urban Decay Lounge, whereas those kind of have a very strong green shift. These are, or this one, Candied Apple, is a little more subtle. It's hard to see. I wish this one was showing up a little bit better, but there you can kind of see the green, but it's coming across very patchy, which is disappointing because with the brush it doesn't do that. So that's my second favorite. And now I'm going to share a random fact about being a researcher. So number one, thinking about how like the scientific method works, where you kind of come up with your hypothesis, it's kind of similar in a history setting. So we'll come up with a question or a list of questions that we want to address in our studies and kind of work out from there. The thing is, sometimes we come up with questions and the sources just don't exist to answer that question, or you find new questions to answer within the sources. So we call it a prospectus. Also, thesis is like our argument, and a prospectus is kind of, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a perspective thesis, basically. And you come up with a prospectus in order to go forth and do your research. So a prospectus usually changes, and that's totally okay. I'm partially saying this to reassure myself because I am almost to the stage where I'll be going and doing actual research. I have done research before. Like when I say actual research, I have done plenty of research papers. I work with primary sources. I've worked with archives, but actual research meaning for my dissertation. So, prospectus, it can change. And my advisor is really good about letting us know it's totally normal for it to change. You probably won't go in with the, you won't come out with the same question you went in with necessarily. It'll probably change, and that's totally fine. So even in the profession of history, we're kind of testing our thesis and our questions against the sources that we find. So it's not ever set in stone. And I think what that kind of emphasizes is the fact that history is not concrete. The events in history are concrete. So, for instance, we know on July 14th, 1789, the Bastille was stormed in France. But we might come up with different interpretations of that event, different interpretations of motives. There's different perspectives for history, whereas the timeline is typically concrete. History can be malleable and it can change. And perspectives of history can change. And that's what we do in the historical profession. We don't just spit facts out. We really critically analyze the past and critically analyze our sources. I think a lot of people just think of historians as like people who just know a lot of random facts, typically very specialized. Although I have had people just assume that I know everything about history, which is like, that's nice. I wish I did, but I'm very specialized. And anyway, it's a lot more than just knowing names and dates. We actually have to be very analytical and really come up with good questions that challenge or add to narratives that we have set in stone. So yeah, that's my first fact, my first random fact about history. And I can't talk. It's been a long day, guys. The life of a historian, it's a long day. On that note, I will be right back with my other two favorite eyeshadows. Okay, I am back. Lighting might have changed a little bit. It's pretty rainy outside, but I also turned on the light above me just to help out a little bit. So I'm going to move on to my two favorites that are on my list from Darling Girl Cosmetics. My first one I actually recently did a video on, and it's one of their multi-chromes. These are really special type of eyeshadows that have, as the name suggests, multiple colors, not just like a duochrome or a triple chrome. Sometimes it's even 4 or 5 colors. This one is Galactic Halo. They have so many beautiful shades, and it was really hard just to pick one, but these are my favorite formula for multi-chrome eyeshadows. And I'm going to do a swatch. This is just a dry swatch. They do better over something like a Pixie Epoxy, something of that sort. But this is just a dry swatch of Galactic Halo. It goes from purple to green. Really beautiful. I love this color. It's made so many beautiful looks. I love it with a deep purple in the crease, and it's just so exciting. These colors are so beautiful. The formula is great on these from Darling Girl, and they also make beautiful eyeliners, so I highly recommend them if you want something a little more unique in your collection and something to kind of be playful with. These are definitely awesome. I highly recommend them. And if you want to check out that video, please do. I have tons of comparisons to, well, tons. I have 4 brands to compare their similar type of shadows. So if you were interested in seeing a couple different brands and their take on these type of products, definitely check that out. My second one from Darling Girl is one of their mattes from their MILF collection, which stands for Mattes I'd Like to Find. And this is Rendezvous. I also got the color Touched by Taboo from them. I love both, but since we were only going to do 10 eyeshadows, I really had to choose. So this is Rendezvous. And if you know me, I love green eyeshadow. It is my favorite eyeshadow color. And I've just been so in love with green. And I got this because I really wanted to wear it with my multi-chromes that were green. It's just a beautiful Hunter Forest matte. And this formula for the mattes is really beautiful. It really blends very nicely. It diffuses well, and it just is nicely pigmented. I really like it. So, second fact about being a researcher, a historian, I guess. Archives. So I think a lot of times in films and stuff, archivists are kind of portrayed as these I don't even know if that's a word, hermits who kind of hide away in the stacks of books and documents. And that's partially true. I should say part of my degree, beyond being a French historian, you have to have 3 minor fields. And one of my minor fields is public history, which is working in museums, archives, basically providing history to the public. And I really wanted that as one of my minors because I loved using archives and I wanted to kind of learn the other side. So I did an internship at an archive locally about a year ago now, actually. Started about a year ago, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked having the behind the scenes experience of seeing what goes into providing records for people to use. So people like me who do research, what does it take to get those records in front of me? And archives are a beautiful thing, and they do the Lord's work for historians, you know, and other researchers, genealogists, people who aren't historians but want to learn more about their own family history. But archives also pose a lot of problems for historians, namely that they can have biases and organization can be poor sometimes. And it's, you know, not necessarily one person's fault. The best practices of an archive are to not be biased and to follow a collections policy. So you'll have like a code of policies that you follow to determine what should be taken in and what shouldn't be taken in, based off of your individual institution. That doesn't always happen, and there was a time before these type of practices necessarily existed, and so sometimes you'll have things that don't really belong, aren't cataloged correctly, or you might not be able to find sources for the individual person or group you're trying to represent in your research. So, for instance, if I was doing a paper on I'm making this up off the top of my head, 18th century writing done by women, for example, it might be a lot easier to find writing done by aristocratic women than it would be to find something written by the average everyday woman. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it was easier for aristocratic women to gain education, opportunities for education. So this is perhaps a bad example, but another reason is that her letters have a higher chance of ending up in an archive than a random peasant lady down the street or who was running a bakery or what have you. So it's difficult. You're not necessarily going to see the full range of possibility in an archive, and it's for many different reasons. Organization is another issue because sometimes there is a process, but again, sometimes that process didn't start from the beginning. Sometimes it changes halfway through. The National Archives of France, which were basically the first national archives ever, they kind of established that system actually during the French Revolution, so I think that's pretty cool. As someone who's into public history and the French Revolution, that's a pretty cool little fact, which is totally the nerdiest thing I've ever said. But anyway, they established national archives. I can maybe guarantee you that they don't have the same system they had back in 1789. Similar, but I'm sure best practices have changed since then. And so I'm going to give you an example of reasons why it's important to keep in mind that archives are not foolproof. There's a historian of France who his life's work has kind of shown one result. And he went back and he went to the archives, and out of a total twist of fate, a total accident, he was given a box that wasn't in the sequence he asked for, wasn't in the collection he asked for. It was just a total mistake on whoever the reference desk person. It was just a mistake on their part. And it totally changed the way he saw his entire body of research, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it, if you've worked your whole life towards this one goal. So that's something to think about, and it's kind of crazy. Archives are not foolproof, so our body of sources that we use to create our research and our output, we have to be very critical of, and we have to understand the inherent biases that exist in the individual archives we're going to. So that's kind of my second little fact about being a researcher. Historians, it's very difficult, and I think it's even more important to be aware of these biases and also be aware of the fact that certain people are inevitably left unheard. And it's a big deal when you're doing history because these are real people who did exist at some point, and it's unfortunate that we can't get to their voices. And sometimes people really reach too far to try and get to their voices, and it's not authentic anymore. It's a very difficult line to toe. So that's my second little fact. I'm going to get my next couple eyeshadows, and I will be right back. Or not. I hate when this happens and I can't hit the button. Anyway, I'm just really passionate about archives, if you couldn't tell. So I'm going to go swatch the other eyeshadows. Okay, hello, good. I'm a little close to the camera. So my next two eyeshadows are from two different brands. The first one is going to be from Geek Chic, and it's going to be really hard to show you guys what it looks like. Again, it's a little gray outside, and also these just pop over glitter glue. This is from their afternoon tea collection. It's called Blueberry Scone. It's very cute. I love this collection. And it's a kind of light purpley blue with pink shimmer. And then the bottom one is called Alkahestry. And this is from Shiro. And this one definitely needs a glitter glue because it is kind of like a looser, not a full-on glitter, but has a kind of looser glittery finish. That's what it looks like there. It's absolutely beautiful. It's from their Full Metal collection, which has actually been discontinued. I think you can still get some of the shadows at a discounted rate, but once they're gone, except for Alkahestry, so I was able to include it in my top 10. So this one is still around. It's from their Full Metal Alchemist collection, which I love that anime. I'm going to try and show you what it looks like in the jar because I think it's a little more true to what you get on your eye. It has beautiful blue shimmer. So gorgeous. I love this shade. I've gone through samples of it before, and I finally bit the bullet and got a full size. I'm very happy that it is like being kept on the line, even though the rest of the collection has been gotten rid of. But I do also really love Blueberry Scone. This is a nice color to use to have a little bit of color, but also be a little toned down for work if need be. So before I move on to my next fact, I think I'm going to share one more eyeshadow in this little round, just to kind of keep things moving. This has become one of my absolute favorite eyeshadows ever. This is Siren of the Sea from Luke C Beauty. This is just magic. Absolutely gorgeous. It's a little sheer and swatching. You can see how it's very glittery, but it has a beautiful kind of natural, not natural, but it shifts, you know, without needing to put another color on. It's not quite a duochrome, but it naturally contours itself. It's just so gorgeous. I'm going to build it up a little bit. It's got kind of a flaky texture. You can kind of see how I have a flake right there. But over glitter glue, this is amazing. My swatches are looking pretty nasty. Let's clean that up. There we go. It's a little bit better. It's really beautiful. I love Siren of the Sea. I could talk about it forever. It's just so captivating in the pan and on the eye. It's beautiful. It's, yes. It's kind of what inspired me to make an all green palette, which I will be doing a video on eventually when I get all the shadows in the mail, but it's great. So that was, what are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, what, 2, 4, 6. That was my 7th eyeshadow. So here's my third fact about being a researcher. You have to clearly state your intentions. So, you know, you go and you do your research, you have your questions, like I said, you kind of come up with your game plan for going to the archives, come up with the boxes and everything you want to look at. But when you're actually writing your book, article, whatever it may be, it is so imperative to be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish. For one, it holds you accountable, so you make sure that you are following all of the strands of your story that you want to communicate. But also, it helps when people try and poke holes in your argument. I haven't had too much of this yet. I have had people ask me questions at conferences that I've specifically answered in the introduction that I'm not going to get to for whatever reason or another. But it helps to clearly state, I'm going to be looking at X, Y, Z. I'm going to be looking at, I'm trying to think of an example of a real book. I'm going to be looking at the way that the assignat, which was a French currency during the French Revolution, the way that the assignat functioned economically, culturally, socially, whatever, during the French Revolution. Bam. In that, you're not addressing how gender affects it, blah, 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 gender relations, whatever, right? But then if you, I'm not going to call any particular historian out because I'm not about that, but there was a book that was talking about a particularly sensitive subject that involved people of color, so it was about the Caribbean. I'm so sorry, he started playing with the toy right under my desk. I lost my train of thought from the squeaks. It was a book about the French Caribbean and plantations, and the author talked mostly about the plantation owners and their wives. Sorry guys, plantation, I'm trying to get it away from him, but I don't want to stop because I'm in the middle of this thought. Plantation owners and their wives, but didn't really address the experience of slaves in the plantations, and that's very problematic, particularly in this increasingly interdisciplinary world. Honestly, I was going to say field, but world. And so not addressing it properly was kind of a problem, and I think it could have been solved, or future problems like this can be solved by saying, I wasn't able to look at these sources, I couldn't find these sources. Just saying that instead of erasing them completely. Billy butt, come on, bud. Instead of erasing them completely is a little bit more of an ethical way of addressing it instead of just pretending like it didn't exist. So state your intentions in the beginning and be very clear about what you did and did not do. and why. And not just saying, well, I'm looking at plantation owners and their experience owning plantations in these particular colonies in these years. And then it's become imperative in this time in the field to say, I'm not looking at this perspective because I could not find the sources to adequately do that. Cover your own butt. And that's one thing I have learned as a researcher. Cover your own butt. Be very explicit with what you know and what you don't know. And on that note, I'm going to be right back with my other swatches because I'm sure this is just as annoying for you guys as it is for me. So I'll be right back. Okay, so sorry about the doggy thing. I just gave him a little treat bone puzzle toy thing, so he'll have some fun with that. So our next two, and we're almost done. I have one more, and then I'll get into my bonus shades, are these two. And these are stunning. This is Debonair from Firenze, and this is Zanzibar from Firenze. They are so beautiful. These two make my eyes just absolutely pop. Purple on brown eyes is already a main favorite for me, but this one just absolutely glows. It has like a pinky gold duochrome that's kind of hard to see here. Kind of see it a little bit there, and it just absolutely pops over Pixie Epoxy. It makes my eyes so bright. It's one of the most flattering eyeshadows I have. And Zanzibar is really beautiful. It's this kind of, I mean, you can see it's a gorgeous teal with a gold laid like inlay, overlay, whatever. I don't know, it's beautiful. It's not quite a duochrome, but it just is like teal with gold, and it's so beautiful and stunning. And I feel like a lot of companies started to do this after, but like what I'm trying to say is it feels like Firenze came out with this first. I'm not saying everyone copied, but it definitely felt very unique at the time that it came out is what I'm trying to get across. So those are those two. And I'm going to include my last one, which is Tempest by Sydney Grace. This is so bright and so beautiful. The texture is gorgeous too. It's a beautiful creamy texture. And there it is. It's so electric. Such a beautiful electric green. And this is just you know, swatch dry with my finger. It's not even used wet or anything. It's such a gorgeous color. And if these three colors aren't the epitome of everything I know and love, I don't know what is. So I really do love these colors. These are three of my favorite indie shadows. I just started getting into Sydney Grace and single shadows in general. Like I always had a ton of loose singles, but just here's a sneak peek, my green palette. I just started getting into getting stuff like that, and I'm really loving it. All right, this video is already going to be so long. I'm going to do I cannot talk. You guys, I feel so terrible, this collaboration, and I'm just messing up. I was helping students with their papers today, and so my mind's a little jumbled. I only had one cup of coffee, and that was at 7 a.m., and it's now 5 p.m. So I'm a little all out of sorts, but let's do my number 4 research fact. It's that you really do learn the best practices for yourself along the way. Ethically, obviously, you know the best practices of your field usually from the get-go. We have a training class that we take in the PhD program, which helps us learn about historical methods and best practices. But what I mean is the best research method for you, you're not going to be perfect right off the bat. I'm still not perfect. I'm struggling to do a research paper right now for a class. That's not in my field at all, and it's been very difficult to find the sources. That's another kind of thing. You really do kind of learn your particular source set and how to find them and where to get them. And sometimes when you're thrown out of your field, it can be a little hard to adjust. That's totally off topic. You do learn the best practices just from working in the field. I know what works best for me in terms of organizing my research and in terms of digesting that, analyzing it, organizing it into an outline, and punching out the writing. I know what works for me by now for the most part. Every now and then I find a new tactic and I think it's great. I was actually really impressed with the student today, the way she had organized her outline. So like we learn from other people, and you really will learn right along the way. That's one of those things that you can't necessarily learn from someone else. They can give you how they do it, but nothing is going to work the same way as your system. So learning the best way to do things. Some people do great with going to archives, taking a bunch of pictures, going home, and looking through those pictures. Sometimes that works for people. For others, they need to be reading the physical documents, breathing in the archival dust, and like working that way. It all depends on your personal vibe and how you like to work. And sometimes that will change. You just kind of learn with time. And I'm very, very young in this process. I don't quite know if I want to keep being in a research type of institution when I graduate, or if I want to focus heavily on teaching. I'm not quite sure yet. Or if I want to work in archives, because that's still something I'm very interested in. I love the organizational aspect of it. I'm not a very personally organized person in terms of things, and I will clean and then it'll kind of explode everywhere. But I love to organize things. It's a very calming practice for me. And I really do think everyone approaches research their own way. So if someone says this is the way, don't let that make you feel bad about the way you do it. If it works for you and you're being ethical and you're being very, at least mentally organized, and you know, okay, this sheet of paper that I have all these notes on came from box 55, series 251 in this archive. As long as you know where you got your stuff and you're being ethical about the way you're using it and you're organizing it in a way that makes sense to you, don't let anyone else feel bad about the way that you do your own craft. That's my little piece of advice. Okay, so here to wrap it up, I have the last couple shadows that are my honorable mentions and some that are discontinued. So the first one is here, and this is called The Shallows. I'm going to go over it one more time because I think a little bit of it got rubbed off. This is The Shallows from Sydney Grace. This one is still available, so definitely get it if you want it. It's really gorgeous. It's a beautiful kind of mermaidy color, a beautiful bright green with a bit of a gold shift to it. It's absolutely beautiful. Next one down is called Are You My Mummy by Fiorne. This is discontinued. I have a full size of it because I love it so much. It's very hard to kind of tell in this type of lighting, but if you put it over a dark base or if you put it over some type of sticky base like Pixie Epoxy, it's a beautiful murky green with a purple duochrome shift. Really hard to show. I'm wondering if I should just find my Pixie Epoxy right now because it really is a beautiful color. There it is. It wasn't in the right place, go figure. I'm gonna definitely swatch it for you guys because I really do love Are You My Mummy. So while that Pixie Epoxy is getting a little tacky, this is Fiorne's Pop Art Mini Skirt. It's a really pretty cream, how many times have I said pretty? Creamsicle orange, but it has bluish purple sparkles that you probably can't see too well here. This shadow has a really special place in my heart. It kind of got me into trying different eyeshadow colors where I had kind of stuck to my normal teals, blue, purples, you know. And once I tried Pop Art Mini Skirt, I fell in love with orange eyeshadow, like this type of orange. Not necessarily like the type of oranges that are in warm neutral palettes, but the ones that are like bright and poppy and summery. And when they discontinued it, I was really sad because all I had was this little mini jar of it. I'm not sure if I've told this story on my channel before. And I posted about it in the Reddit Indie Makeup and More group, that I was really sad that I had missed out on my opportunity to get a full size before it had sold out. And I had been ordering from Fiorne quite a bit back then. And when I opened my next order, which was just a single lipstick, I noticed they put a full size of this shade in there. Just because. And they wrote that they had I posted about it. I posted about it in the group and I said how amazing it was, and I couldn't believe that they had figured out who I was for my Reddit name. I don't know how they put all the pieces together. But the chemist from, I think it was the chemist from Fiorne, commented and said that they set one aside when they found it for me for my next order. They waited and made sure that he was the one who packed my next order. And I was so touched, like beyond touched and grateful for that. It has always, I mean, I've always loved Fiorone, but it made me realize just how much of a great company they are. So anyway, here's Are You My Mummy over Pixie Epoxy. You can kind of see how it's a lot more vibrant, and when I turn it, it kind of turns purple. It's really such a beautiful color. You can kind of see the purple on the outer edges. Great. So this one is my other honorable mention. This is Notoriously Morbid's Silent Samurai. It's a Walking Dead Michonne reference. It's a beautiful blurple shade with blue sparks. I was really sad because I lost a box of indie shadows when I moved from my last dorm, when I moved home before I moved into the apartments the last year. And yeah, I lost this shade. I eventually found one in a swap group, but I was very sad because this is so stunning. And the last shadow is from Darling Girl, and this is Death by Unicorn. It's a reference to Cabin in the Woods. It was from their Oh the Horror collection. They still have that collection, but this shadow wasn't kept around, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it wasn't popular. It's really hard to tell just how beautiful it is on camera, but it's a really nice delicate baby pink with blue and purple sparks to it. I really wish that they brought it back, and I'm sad that I only got a mini. I use it so sparingly because I do love it that much. I talked to Susan about it, the owner of Darling Girl. I commented that I really wanted to see this color return, and she told me she loved it too, so I'm hoping one day it comes back. Okay, so my last little fact about research, and I don't know, I might have taken a totally different approach to this than Mariam did, but my last fact is that it is a truly collaborative process. I think a lot of people do think of historians as these like solitary figures who just kind of like do their work on their own, and that's true a lot of the time, but it really is a collaborative process, especially at the level I'm at, being a PhD student. We do kind of you know, if you're lucky, you can find someone or a couple people who kind of become your little surrogate family, and you can share, you know, tips and tricks. For example, with my group, you know, if we find something digitally or in a finding aid for an archive in France that will help someone with their dissertation topic, you know, we'll send it to them. If we find an article that seems relevant to their interest, you know, we share it. We help each other out in that type of way. And it really is a collaborative process where, you know, you throw ideas off of each other, something might stick, you know, they might think of something you don't think of. And if you have that type of support system, it really is invaluable. I'm particularly lucky where I am because we have 8 to 10 people in my particular field, which is also scary because that means there's a lot of competition. And that's the danger, I think, of grad schools. A lot of times you're pitted against each other, whichever. I think it's pitted against each other. And so it can kind of become this situation where you're fighting for resources and you don't want to share, you know, the information you have because it's competition, but really true research in this type of environment should be at least somewhat collaborative, and ideally collaborative across disciplines. So, you know, art historians dealing with anthropologists, dealing with historians, dealing with sociologists, why can't I think? An economist. I couldn't think of how to actually say that word for a second. It really should be cross-disciplinary, and it really is more of a collaborative process than I think a lot of people would imagine it to be, and more than I imagined it to be when I started working in the field. So that's my last fact, and I thought it would be a cute one to end on too, since this was a collaboration video with Mariam. I'm really excited to hear what she has to say, especially since we are in such drastically different fields, but I always love hearing about people in academia and working in labs and everything like that, because in research fields, because it's really interesting to hear where other people come from and how they approach questions and the whole process and all of that. So I'm very excited, and I was really excited to you know, see that she wanted to collaborate with me, because I've loved her channel for a very long time. So thank you to Mariam for wanting to do this with me, and yeah, I hope you guys check out her channel. She has a fantastic channel with lots of get ready with me's, which is a weird way of putting it, tutorials, reviews, favorites, all of that. I really love her get ready with me. She's just very I mean, we're very friendly. We watch each other's channels and comment, but it is like watching a friend. If you're new to her channel, I think it's very easy to kind of feel comfortable watching her and listening to her stories, and, you know, sometimes rants and everything. It's just really fun to watch. I really love her channel, so I highly recommend checking it out. And I will talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed looking at some indie brands. I have a lot more indie content coming up, so keep an eye out for that. I am always in my indie brand, you know, love craze. I love them so much. So I hope to talk to you guys soon. And yeah, goodbye.